Mara Vance threw the silver dollar at her father's boots and watched it spin in the dust. "Keep it. I'd rather starve than take coin from a man ashamed of his own daughter." Her hand tightened on the trunk's leather grip. Behind her, the Missouri farmhouse she had scrubbed clean for 38 summers stood silent as a tomb. Her father would not lift his eyes. Her stepmother's voice carried from the porch sharp final. "Don't come back, Mara. No man wants a heifer for a wife." Mara walked. She did not cry until the road bent. Before we ride deeper into Mara's story, friend, if her heart speaks to yours, take a moment to subscribe and stay with this channel until the very last word. And tell me, what city are you watching from tonight? Drop your town in the comments below. I want to see just how far Mara's story has traveled to reach you. The stagecoach jolted to a stop a half-mile shy of cold water. Mara Vance climbed down without waiting for the hand the driver was not going to offer. "Far as I take you, missus," the driver said. "Ma'am," Mara said. "What's that, ma'am? I ain't married." The driver spat tobacco juice into the road. "Reckon I see why." Mara set her trunk in the dust and looked up at him. Her eyes were tired, but they did not flinch. "You took my dollar all the way to the depot," she said. "Depot's another quarter-mile up that road." "Wagon's heavy." "I weigh what I weigh, mister. Same as I did when you took my coin in Sedalia. You didn't feel the weight then." "Reckon I felt it the whole way." "Reckon you'll feel my boot if you don't drive on." The driver looked at her hard. Mara did not look away. Her hand stayed on the trunk. Her chin stayed up. He climbed back to his seat. He snapped the reins. The coach rolled away in a churn of dust, and Mara stood alone in the road with one trunk and her mother's recipe book wrapped in oilcloth under her arm. She did not cry. She had cried already. 3 days ago, on a road outside Sedalia when nobody could see her. She was done crying for a while. She lifted the trunk by its handle, shifted it onto her shoulder, the way her mother had taught her 30 years ago when they hauled wash to the river, and she started walking. The first person to see her was a boy in a feed store apron. He stopped sweeping. He stared. "Mornin'," Mara said. The boy turned and ran inside the store. The second was 2 women on a milliner's porch with parasols across their laps. "Lord have mercy. Look at the size of her, Edith. Hide the biscuits." The taller one laughed behind her hand. The other did not bother to hide her mouth. Mara stopped. She set the trunk down on the boardwalk between them. She turned to face the porch. "Ladies?" The 2 of them stared. "I ain't askin' for charity," Mara said. "I'm askin' a question. Y'all know where a woman might find lodging in this town?" "Boarding house," the taller one said finally. "2 streets down, Mrs. Hollis." "Much obliged." "She won't have you." Mara looked at her. Looked at her long and quiet, the way her mother had taught her when she was 10, and a deacon's wife had said something cruel at a church supper. Her mother's voice came back to her plain, as if she were standing on the boardwalk too. "You don't argue with a small woman, Mara. You stand still and let her hear how small she sounds." "That'll be between Mrs. Hollis and me, miss," Mara said. "But I thank you for the gossip. Most folks charge for it." The shorter woman's mouth dropped open. Mara lifted her trunk and walked on. A boy of maybe 9 years old picked up a clod of dirt from the street and threw it at her back. It hit her between the shoulder blades. Mara stopped walking. She set the trunk down very carefully. She turned around. The boy was already running, but the boy's mother was standing on a porch 10 feet away with her arms folded. "Ma'am," Mara said, "did you see your son just throw dirt at me?" "I didn't see nothin'." "You was looking right at him." "I said I didn't see nothin', missus." "Ma'am." "What, ma'am?" "And you did. You saw him plain, and you smiled when he done it." The woman flushed. "Get on, missus. We don't want your kind here." "My kind, ma'am. You know what I mean. I want to hear you say it." The woman's mouth worked. Nothing came out. Mara nodded slowly. "I figured. The cruel ones never do say it out loud. They just smile when their boys throw dirt. She picked up her trunk. You raise him to throw rocks next, ma'am. He'll be a fine man someday. She walked on. She did not look back. But behind her on the porch, she heard the woman slap the doorframe and curse under her breath, and Mara felt one small warm thing move in her chest. Not pride, not yet. Just the small warm thing that comes from a woman who has, for the first time in a long time, said the words out loud. Mrs. Hollis was a thin woman with hair pulled so tight it stretched her eyebrows. She stood in her doorway and looked Mara up and down twice before she spoke. No vacancy. Your sign says rooms available. Sign's old. Sign's freshly painted, ma'am. The letters ain't even faded. I said no vacancy. Mara set her trunk down on the porch. Mrs. Hollis, I got coin. $2 in silver hard money from honest work I did at a hotel kitchen in Sedalia. I cook. I keep a room cleaner in any boarder you've had through that door. I rise at 4. I don't drink. I don't smoke. I don't entertain men. I'd be the easiest tenant you ever rented to. Mrs. Hollis looked past her into the street like she was hoping somebody would come along and rescue her from the conversation. It ain't proper. What ain't proper? You. Here. The other boarders. What about the other boarders? Mrs. Hollis lowered her voice. You'll eat my pantry to the boards, missus. Ma'am? What? Ma'am. I told the driver, I'll tell you. I am not married, but I am a grown woman, and I will be addressed proper in this country, even if I am being turned out of a doorway. Mrs. Hollis closed the door in her face. Mara stood on the porch a long moment. Her hand was shaking. She closed it tight around the handle of her trunk and went down the steps. The hotel man laughed at her. He did not even pretend not to. He stood behind his counter with his thumbs hooked in his vest and laughed until his eyes watered. Ma'am, he said when he had collected himself. Ma'am, the beds in this here establishment is built for ordinary folk. I'd hate to have to charge you for a busted frame. I weighed less than a barrel of flour at the depot scale in Sedalia, mister. Your beds will hold. I'm sorry, ma'am. We're full up. Your register is open behind you. I can see 4 blank lines from here. Reserved. All 4. All 4. Mara stood there a moment. She took a slow breath. She nodded once. Mister. I rode 3 days on a stage with a man who chewed tobacco the whole way and spat it out the window into the wind. I have heard worse than your laugh. I have walked away from worse than your lie. But you remember what you said today. Because someday in this town, a woman is going to need a place to sleep, and she's going to remember whether you laughed at her or not. I hope she's kind to you, kinder than you was to me. She lifted her trunk and walked out. The general store was a man named Pritchard. He didn't laugh. He didn't have to. He pointed at the door before she had finished asking. Out. I only asked if you was hirin', mister. Out. Now. I can keep books. I can stock a shelf. I can... Woman, I said out. Mara held her ground. You ain't even looked at me proper, she said. What you got against me? Pritchard finally raised his eyes to her face. He had pale, narrow eyes like a man who slept poorly. Mr. Warren don't like strangers in his town, he said. Especially strangers who look to settle. He owns the paper on this store. He owns the paper on half this street. You go on back where you came from, missus. Ma'am. What? Ma'am. And who is Mr. Warren to tell a free woman where she can stand in a free country? Pritchard's mouth pulled tight. You'll find out, he said. Now get. She found out within the hour. She was sitting on her trunk outside the livery, drinking from a tin cup of water the stable boy had given her without his master seeing when the carriage pulled up. Black carriage. Polished door. The man who stepped out wore a coat too fine for the heat. Madam? Mara stood. She brushed her skirt. She did not curtsy. Sir? My name is Aldrich Warren. I own this town. My name is Mara Vance, Mr. Warren. I own myself. A muscle moved in his jaw. He smiled with only the bottom half of his face. Charming. Mrs. Vance? Miss Vance, I have been informed by several of my friends that you are seeking employment and lodging in cold water. That's so. I regret to inform you that you will find neither. Already have, mister. Found neither in 3 different doors. Don't take much regret to inform a body of what's already plain. Warren's smile thinned. Then I trust you'll be on the next stage. Stage don't come through till Friday. Wednesday. Stage driver told me Friday. The stage will come through on Wednesday for you, Miss Vance. I have arranged it. Mara looked at him, long and quiet. Mr. Warren, I have walked into towns before, where the man at the top didn't want me. I have walked out of every one of them on my own 2 feet in my own time. You can buy a stage. You cannot buy my feet. I will leave cold water when I have earned the coin to leave it and not before. And how do you plan to earn that coin, Miss Vance, when no man in this town will hire you? I'll find one who will. Warren laughed, soft, the kind of laugh a man uses when he wants to make sure a woman knows he is not afraid of her. There is no such man within 100 miles. Then I'll walk 100 miles. He looked at her then, really looked at her for the first time, and whatever he saw in her face made his smile go small and tight and mean. You are a stupid woman, Miss Vance. I've been called worse, Mr. Warren, by smarter men than you. He stepped half an inch closer, lowered his voice. You will find, he said, that I am not a man who suffers stupidity gladly. Wednesday's stage. Friday's road, mister. I walk. He held her eyes a long second. Then he climbed back into his carriage, and the carriage pulled away. The stable boy was watching her from the doorway. He was maybe 12 years old, and his hair stuck up in 3 directions. Ma'am? Yes, son. That was Mr. Warren. I gathered. He runs everything. I gathered that too. The boy looked over his shoulder, then back at her. There's one place, he said. One place what? One place might hire you, if a body was lookin'. Mara set her tin cup down on the trunk. Tell me, son. Walkin' H about 4 miles north of town belongs to Mr. Rowan Hale. Rowan Hale. Yes, ma'am. And why ain't Mr. Warren told Mr. Hale not to hire me? The boy's mouth twitched at the corner. It was almost a smile. Mr. Hale don't take instructions, ma'am. From Mr. Warren. From nobody. Mara studied the boy's face. He was telling the truth, or his version of it. What kind of man is he? The boy hesitated. Big. How big? Big as a barn door, ma'am. Folks call him the giant. Mean? No, ma'am. Just quiet. Got a scar from his ear to his collarbone. Don't talk much. Pays his hands fair. Lost his cook 6 weeks back. Why'd he lose his cook? Drunk fell off a wagon and broke his neck. Lord have mercy. Yes, ma'am. Mara picked up her trunk. 4 miles north, you said. Take the road past the church. Keep the river on your right. You'll see the gate. What's your name, son? Eli, ma'am. Eli, you got a kindness in you that this town don't deserve. Don't let 'em beat it out of you. The boy ducked his head. Ma'am? Yes. You ain't going to walk it. I am. In this heat. I have walked further in worse sun. Yes, ma'am. She started for the road. Ma'am. She turned. The boy stepped down off the porch. He held out a piece of cornbread wrapped in a kerchief. For the walk. Mara took it. Her hand was steady. Her voice was not. God bless you, Eli. God bless you, ma'am. She walked. The first mile she counted her father's silences. The second mile she counted her stepmother's. The third mile she stopped counting and started talking low and quiet to her mother, who had been dead 9 years. Mama. They turned me out, Mama. Same as Sedalia. Same as Independence. Same as Boonville. I don't know how many doors a woman can knock on, Mama. I don't know how many doors there is in the world. She walked. A wagon passed her going the other way. The driver looked at her. His mouth opened. Then he caught a look at her face, and his mouth closed, and the wagon kept going. Mara kept walking. 2 hours in, she sat down beneath a cottonwood and ate half the cornbread Eli had given her. She wrapped the rest back in the kerchief. She drank from a creek. She washed her face. She stood up. She walked. 3 hours in, she heard horses behind her. 3 riders coming up at a trot. She stepped to the side of the road and waited for them to pass. They did not pass. The lead rider drew up beside her. He was tall in a dust-yellow duster, and he had a face like he had eaten something he did not enjoy. "Miss Vance." Mara looked up at him. "I ain't told no rider on this road my name. Mr. Warren told me." "And you are?" "Name's Croft. I work for Mr. Warren." "What does Mr. Warren want of me?" "Mr. Croft. Mr. Warren wants you to turn around. Mr. Warren can want what he likes. I am walking to the walking H." The other 2 riders had moved up to flank her, one on each side of the road. They did not speak. They did not need to. "Mr. Warren has paid your stage fare," Croft said. "Wednesday morning. He has paid for a room at the hotel until then. He is being generous, ma'am, when he does not have to be." "He is being afraid, Mr. Croft." Croft's eyebrows rose half an inch. "Afraid of what, ma'am?" "He don't know yet. But a man don't pay stage fare for a woman he ain't afraid of." Croft looked at her. He looked at her trunk. He looked at her boots, scuffed white with dust. He looked back at her face. "Miss Vance, I am telling you plain as a man can tell a woman. Turn around." "Or what, mister?" The 2 flanking riders shifted in their saddles. Mara set her trunk down in the road. She did not take her eyes off Croft. "Mr. Croft, I am a woman alone on a public road in the United States of America. You are 3 armed men in the employ of a man who does not own this road, no matter what the deed says back in town. If you mean to do me harm, do it. If you mean to scare me back into cold water, you have failed already. And if you mean to ride away and tell Mr. Warren that I would not turn, you had best get to it. The day is getting on, and I have got 4 miles less to walk than when we started talking." Croft did not move. For a long second, nobody on that road moved. Then Croft tipped his hat. "Ma'am." He turned his horse. The other 2 turned with him. They rode back the way they had come, and they did not look back. Mara stood in the road with her hand pressed flat against her chest, where her heart was beating like a hammer on a horseshoe. "Lord," she whispered. "Lord, I am scared." She picked up her trunk. "But I ain't turnin'." She walked. She reached the gate of the walking H 2 hours past noon. She set down her trunk. She put her hands on her hips, and she breathed. A long time she stood there, long enough that the sun moved a finger's width across the sky, long enough that a meadowlark started up in the brush behind her, and then stopped like even the bird was waiting to see what she would do. Then she heard the boots, heavy, slow, deliberate, coming down the rise on the other side of the gate. Mara did not turn. She squared her shoulders and waited. "Miss," the voice said, low, quiet, closer than she had thought. "Sir." "You lost?" "No, sir. I am not lost." "Then what are you doing at my gate?" Mara swallowed. She lifted her chin. She turned to face him. The man was big. Eli had not lied. He was big as a barn door. There was a scar that ran from just under his right ear down into the open collar of his shirt. He was looking at her with eyes the color of wet slate. She held his eyes. "Mr. Hale, my name is Mara Vance. I have walked 4 miles in the heat to ask you for work. I cook. I cook better than any man you have ever paid wages to. I will feed your crew 3 times a day. I will not steal. I will not gossip. I will not faint at hard talk. I am not asking for pity. I am asking for the chance to prove it." Rowan Hale looked at her. He did not speak. He looked at her trunk. He looked at the road behind her. He looked at her boots, scuffed white with dust. He looked at her hands, and her hands were shaking, and she did not try to hide it. He looked back at her face. "Miss Vance." "Sir?" "How much you ate today?" The question landed funny. Mara opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. "Half a piece of cornbread, sir, from a stable boy in town." Rowan Hale nodded once, slow. Like a man making a decision he did not intend to take back. He reached up and unhooked the latch on the gate. "Come on in," he said. "Supper's at 6. Mara Vance stepped through the gate of the walking H, with her trunk on her shoulder and her heart still beating like a hammer. "Set it down," Rowan Hale said. "Sir." "The trunk. Set it down. You've been carrying that thing 4 miles. "I can carry it to the house, mister." "I know you can. I'm telling you to set it down." Mara set the trunk down. Rowan picked it up with one hand like it weighed nothing. He turned and started up the rise. He did not look back to see if she followed. Mara stood a half-second, then she went after him. "Mr. Hale." "Miss Vance." "You ain't asked me a single question." "I asked you one. How much you ate today?" "That ain't a hiring question." "It is the way I hire." "Begging your pardon, mister, but a man who's lost his cook 6 weeks back ought to ask a stranger more than what she had for breakfast." Rowan stopped walking. He turned. He looked down at her, and the man was a foot taller than her at least, and broad with it, and the scar on his neck moved when he spoke. "Miss Vance?" "Sir." "You walked 4 miles in the sun, with a trunk, after a town full of people told you to turn around. After Mr. Warren's man rode out to put the fear in you on the road." Mara blinked. "How'd you know about Croft?" "I know Croft's horse. Saw the dust coming back without you on it. That tells a man more than any hiring question I could ask. Now come on. Supper's at 6 and you got 3 hours to make me believe Eli was right about you." He walked on. Mara stood in the dust a moment. "Eli," she said quiet. "Boy's got a longer reach than I figured." "Eli's my cousin's boy," Rowan said over his shoulder. "He sends a runner up here twice a week. Come on, miss." "Hey." The bunkhouse boys came out one at a time as she crossed the yard. The first was thin and red-haired and could not have been more than 18. He stopped on the bunkhouse porch with a coffee tin in his hand and stared. The second was older gray at the temples with a limp. He looked at her once and went back inside without a word. The third was a Mexican man with a kind face and a long scar across his cheek. He took his hat off and held it against his chest. "Ma'am." "Sir." "You the new cook?" Mara looked at Rowan. Rowan said nothing. "I'm the woman walking to the cookhouse," Mara said. "Whether I'm the cook by sundown is between Mr. Hale and the supper plates." The Mexican man smiled, just a little, just at the corners. "Tomas Reyes, ma'am." "Mara Vance." "Welcome to the walking H, Miss Vance." The fourth man came out of the barn. The fourth man was trouble. He was big, not as big as Rowan, but bigger than any of the others, and he had a face that had been hit too many times in the wrong places. He stopped halfway across the yard. He looked Mara up and down. He spat in the dirt. "Boss." Sigh. "You serious?" "I ain't ever been the jokin' kind." "Boss, sigh." Rowan said the name quiet. He did not raise his voice. But the man sigh stopped talking like a door had slammed in his throat. "You got something to say to Miss Vance?" Rowan said. "You say it to her face, not over her head." Sigh looked at Mara. "Miss," he said. The word had a sneer wrapped in it. "Reckon you ain't going to fit through the cookhouse door." "Reckon I will, mister." "Reckon you'll bust the floor." "Reckon the floor'll hold mister same as it held your last cook who weighed more'n me with the whiskey in him." The yard went quiet. The red-headed boy on the porch made a sound that was almost a laugh and turned it into a cough. Sigh's face went a slow color. "Boss," he said. "Boss, you ain't going to let her say, sigh. Boss. Walk yourself to the south pasture and count the steers in the upper draw. I want a number by sundown." "Boss, that's a 2-hour ride." "Then I reckon you best get going." Sigh stood there a second longer. Then he spat again closer to Mara's boot this time, and he turned and walked toward the barn. Mara watched him go. Her hand was tight on the strap of her satchel. Her face did not move. "Mr. Hale." "Miss Vance?" You didn't have to send him off on my account. I didn't. I sent him off on his own account. Cy's been riding the edge of his own rope for a month. Ain't your business and ain't your fault. He'll come back madder. He will. And then what? Rowan looked at her. Then we'll see what kind of man he is. Come on. Cookhouse is round the back. The cookhouse had a stove that was bigger than any she had ever cooked on, and a pantry that was nearly bare. Mara stood in the doorway and looked at the shelves. Mr. Hale. Miss Vance. Your last cook was a thief or a fool, maybe both. He was a drunk miss. That's all three then. Rowan almost smiled. The corner of his mouth moved a quarter inch and then went still. What you got in mind for supper? What you got in the smokehouse? Half a hog, quarter of beef. Whatever the boys shot last week, which was 3 rabbits and a turkey too tough for anything but stew. Onions. Gardens out the back door. Lard, crock under the table. Flour. Barrel by the stove. Sugar. Tin on the shelf, but Cy's been getting into it. He'll get into it less by tomorrow. That a promise? That's a fact, mister. Rowan looked at her a long second. You need anything else? I need a apron, a sharp knife, and 40 minutes alone. Apron's on the hook, knife's on the block. 40 minutes is yours. He turned to go. Mr. Hale? He stopped in the doorway. Sir? I ain't ate since yesterday morning but a half piece of cornbread. If a body was to find a biscuit and a piece of cheese while she was working, she might get to supper without fainting over the stove. Rowan walked to the pantry. He took down a wrapped cloth. He set it on the table in front of her. Biscuits from breakfast. Cheese is in the spring house. I'll send Eli up with it. Eli's here. Eli's been here since noon. Boy walked the back trail when he saw Croft ride out. Mara sat down hard on the bench. She put her hand over her face. She did not cry. She had said she was done crying for a while, and she meant it. But she sat there a long second with her hand over her face and her shoulders moved twice. When she dropped her hand, Rowan was already gone. She cooked. She cooked the way her mother had cooked, the way her grandmother had cooked before her mother, the way the women in her family had cooked for 100 years on land that did not love them. She rendered lard. She seared pork. She chopped onions until her eyes burned. She browned flour in the drippings until it smelled like a memory. She thinned the gravy with milk from the spring house. She salted, tasted, salted again. She made biscuits from scratch with a fork because she could not find a pastry cutter, and the dough came together under her hands the way dough comes together for a woman who has done it 10,000 times. She did not hum. She did not sing. She worked. Eli brought the cheese. Eli brought eggs. Eli brought a bag of dried apples from somewhere Mara did not ask about. Eli stood in the doorway with his hat in his hand and watched her work for 10 minutes before he spoke. Ma'am? Yes, son. You really walked it. I really walked it. Croft come back to town white as paper. Did he? Mr. Warren shouted at him in the street. I heard it from the livery. Mara stopped stirring. What did Mr. Warren shout? Eli looked at his boots. Spit it out, son. He said he'd see her broke before the week was out, ma'am. That's what he said. He said it loud. Mara turned back to the stove. She stirred. Eli. Ma'am? You hungry? Some. Sit at the table. Plates on the shelf. Ma'am, I ain't a hand. You walked the back trail to warn a woman you ain't met but once. You eat at this table tonight, son. Tomorrow we'll see about calling you a hand. Eli sat. He ate 2 biscuits and a piece of cheese, and he did not say a word the whole time. And when he was done, he washed his plate without being asked. The bell rang at 6. The men came in. 5 of them. Rowan Tomas, the gray-haired man with the limp, the red-haired boy, and a 5th man, Mara had not yet seen, square and quiet with hands the size of dinner plates and a Bible leather face. They came in, and they sat down, and they put their hats on the bench beside them, and they looked at the food. They did not look at her. That was fine. She had not expected them to look at her. She brought the platter to the table. She set it down. She brought the gravy boat. She set it down. She brought the biscuits in a basket lined with the cleanest dish towel she could find. She stepped back from the table. Rowan picked up his fork. Nobody else moved. Mara realized after a long second that they were waiting for him. Rowan took a bite of pork. He chewed. He swallowed. He set his fork down. The silence in the cookhouse was a thing you could have cut with the knife on the block. Tomas. Boss? You ever ate anything like this? No, boss. Walt. The gray-haired man with the limp. Boss. You? My mama, boss, 40 years ago, before she passed. Sam. The Bible leather man. Boss. You? Boss. I ain't ate at all since I was 11-year-old. I just been filling up. This here is eatin'. Rowan looked at the red-haired boy. Jesse. Boss. You're crying, son. No, I ain't, boss. You are. It's the onions, boss. You ain't cut a onion in your life. Yes, boss. The whole table laughed. It came out small and surprised, like men who had not laughed at a supper table in a long while. Rowan looked up at Mara. Miss Vance? Sir? Sit down. Sir, I ain't a cook eats after the men mister, that's how it's done. Miss Vance? Sir? Sit down. She sat. Tomas moved over to make room. He did it without making a thing of it. He did it like a man making room for his sister. Rowan put a piece of pork on her plate, then a biscuit, then a spoon of gravy. Then he passed the platter on without a word. Mara picked up her fork. Her hand was shaking. She put the fork down. She put her hand flat on the table. She breathed. Miss Vance? Mr. Hale. You ain't gotta perform, you just gotta eat. She picked up her fork. She ate. Bethai. Sai came back at full dark. She heard him before she saw him, boots on the porch, hard deliberate. The cookhouse door banged open against the wall. Boss? The men at the table stopped chewing. Sai? 212 in the upper draw. 3 head missing from last count. Where'd they go? Fence is cut on the north line. Cut clean. Wire cutter cut. The silence at the table changed. Rowan set his fork down. How many cuts? 3, spaced out, like a man wanted it to look like the herd done it themselves. Tracks? 2 horses, shod, heading east. East goes where boss, east goes to Warren's South Range. The table went so quiet Mara could hear the stove tick. Rowan stood up. He stood up slow. Like a man who knew that once he stood, things were going to start moving, and he did not want to start them moving until he had thought it through. Sigh. Boss, you eat. Tomas ride out at first light and find the cuts. Walt go with him and read the tracks. Sam, you ride to the sheriff in Bartlett, not Coldwater. Bartlett. You tell Sheriff Doyle I want him out here by Wednesday with 2 deputies and the brand book. Boss. Jesse. Boss. You stay on the place tomorrow. Ride the inside fence. You see anybody on Walking H land that ain't wearing a Walking H hat, you fire 1 shot in the air and you ride for the house. You don't engage. Boss? Rowan looked at Sai. Sai. You eat, then you sleep. Then tomorrow you ride with me. Where we ridin', boss? To Coldwater. Sai's face changed. Boss. To Coldwater, see. To pay a call on Mr. Aldrich Warren. Sai sat down. He picked up his fork. His hand was steadier than Mara's had been. Boss. He said quieter than he had spoken all day. I owe you one. You owe Miss Vance one. She's the reason I ain't already rode out tonight. Sai looked across the table at Mara. His face did a thing she did not know how to read. It was not friendly. It was not unfriendly. It was the face of a man who has been wrong about something and does not yet know how to be wrong about it gracefully. Miss, he said. Mr. Sai. I spit at your boot today. You did. That was small of me. It was. I ain't apologizing. I ain't asking you to. He nodded once. He picked up a biscuit. He ate it slow. After the men had eaten, after the dishes had been washed, after Eli had been put to bed in the loft of the cookhouse with a blanket of Mara's and a promise of ham for breakfast, Rowan came back through the cookhouse door. He did not sit. Mara was at the basin washing the last of the gravy boat. Her sleeves were pushed up to the elbows. Her hair had come out of its pins. She did not turn. "Miss Vance? Mr. Hale? You'll have a room in the house." "Sir, I can sleep in the cookhouse." "You'll have a room in the house. The room belonged to my sister. She ain't here no more. Bed's clean. There's a key. You lock the door at night." "Mr. Hale." "You lock the door at night, miss? Not because I don't trust my men. My men is good men. But because Cy is going to stew on being wrong about you, and a man stewin' don't always stew quiet, and a woman in a strange house ought to have a key. You hear me?" "I hear you, mister." "Good." He turned to go. "Mr. Hale." He stopped. "Sir?" "Why?" "Why what?" "Why you doing this?" He stood in the doorway with his back to her a long second. "Miss Vance." "Sir?" "My sister was 24-year-old when she rode into a town just like Coldwater. She was looking for work. She was a school teacher. She had a letter of reference and $40 sewed into her hem, and she was the smartest woman I ever knowed." He did not turn around. She asked at 3 doors. 3 doors said no. She walked 4 miles to a ranch where she heard a man might hire a teacher for his children. The man hired her. 2 months later, the town came out and burned the ranch. Mara's hand stopped in the basin. "Burned it," she said. "Burned it. Killed the man. Killed his wife. My sister run for the river. She run for 2 miles in the dark with her dress on fire. They found her at sunup." "Mr. Hale, that was 9 years ago, Miss Vance. And every time a woman walks 4 miles up that road with a trunk on her shoulder, I open the gate. I will keep opening the gate until I cannot open a gate no more. You hear me?" "I hear you, mister." "Good." He started through the door. "Mr. Hale?" "Miss Vance." "What was her name?" He stopped a long second. "Hannah." "Hannah Hale." "Yes, miss." "I will pray for her tonight, mister." "You don't have to. I will pray for her tonight, mister, and you will not stop me because she is a woman who walked up a road, and I am a woman who walked up a road, and the road is the same road in the end." Rowan Hale stood in the doorway. He did not speak for a long time. Then he said very quiet, "Thank you, miss." He went out. The room had been Hannah's. There was a quilt on the bed that had been pieced by hand. There was a small mirror on the wall and a wash basin on a stand and a window that looked east toward the road. There was a key in the door. Mara turned the key. She sat down on the bed and she put her face in her hands, and she did not cry. She had said she was done crying for a while, and she meant it. But she sat there a long time. When she stood up, she crossed to the window, and she pulled the curtain back a half-inch, and she looked east toward Coldwater, toward the road she had walked. And she saw the rider, a single rider, coming up the road at a trot, 1/2 mile out, maybe less. The moon was 3/4 full. She could see the horse. She could see the man's hat. It was not Croft. It was not anybody she had seen before. She let the curtain fall. She walked soft down the hall to Rowan's door. She knocked once. "Mr. Hale?" "Miss Vance." "Rider on the road, comin' up, single horse, ain't Croft." The door opened in 3 seconds. Rowan was still in his shirt. He had his gun belt in his hand. "How far?" "1/2 mile when I seen him. Closer now." "Wake Tomas. Quiet. Tell him north side of the porch. You stay in your room. Lock the door." "Mr. Hale." "Lock the door, Miss Vance." She went. She woke Tomas in 3 words. She came back to her room. She turned the key. She sat on the bed in the dark, with her back to the wall, and her hand pressed flat over her own mouth because her heart was beating so loud she was afraid the rider could hear it from the road. She heard the boots on the porch. She heard Rowan's voice. "That's far enough, mister. State your business." She heard the rider. The rider's voice was thin, young, scared. Mr. Hale, sir. My name is Caleb Henley. I ride for Mr. Warren." "Then you are on the wrong porch, son." Sir, please. I ain't here for Mr. Warren. I rode out to warn you." A silence. "Warn me of what?" "Sir, they are comin' tomorrow night. Mr. Warren and 6 men. They are comin' for the woman." Mara's hand tightened over her mouth. "What do you mean comin' for the woman?" "Sir, What do you mean, son? Say the words." The rider's voice broke. "Sir, Mr. Warren said if Coldwater cannot run her out of town, then she will be run out of the county, and if the county cannot run her out, then she will be run out of the world. He said, sir, he said it at supper. He said it in front of his foreman and his lawyer and 3 men I do not know. He said her name. He said your name. He said he would see this place burn before he let a fat woman make a fool of him in his own town." The silence on the porch was a long silence. Then Rowan said very quiet, "Caleb." "Sir." "Why are you telling me this?" "Sir, my mama was a hand on the walking H when your sister was alive. My mama said your sister taught me my letters when I was 4-year-old. My mama said if I ever saw fire comin' for this place, I was to ride. Sir, I am ridin'." The silence. "Caleb." "Sir." "Get off your horse. Come inside. You eat, you sleep, you do not go back to Coldwater. You hear me?" "Sir, my mama. Your mama will be on this porch by sunup. Tomas will ride for her now. You hear me, son?" "Yes, sir." "Come inside." Mara heard the boots on the porch. She heard the door open. She heard 4 sets of feet Rowan the boy Caleb Tomas, and a 4th she had not expected, which she realized after a second was Cy, who had come out of the bunkhouse in the dark with his rifle. She heard Rowan in the hall. "Miss Vance?" She unlocked the door. She opened it. Rowan was standing in the hall with his gun belt on now, and his face was the face of a man who had stopped being tired. "Miss Vance?" "Mr. Hale." "You hear all that?" "I heard all that, sir. You want to ride out at first light. I will saddle a horse for you, and I will give you $100 in silver, and I will send Tomas with you to the railroad in Bartlett, and you will be on a train by Wednesday, and you will be in St. Louis by Friday, and Mr. Warren will never find you. That is one road, miss. I am putting it on the table because a woman has the right to know her roads." "Mr. Hale." "Miss Vance." "What is the other road?" Rowan looked at her. His eyes were the color of wet slate, and they did not move from her face. "The other road, miss, is you stay. And tomorrow I ride to Coldwater with Cy, and we tell Mr. Warren, in front of his foreman and his lawyer, and any man who will stand with him, that the next horse that crosses my fence, with intent, will be shot, and the next match struck on Walking H land will be answered with the sheriff out of Bartlett and a federal marshal out of Topeka, because cattle theft is a federal matter when it crosses a county line, and we already got the cuts to prove the theft. The other road, miss, is war. Quiet war if he is smart. Loud war if he is a fool. And I do not yet know which kind of man Mr. Warren is." Mara stood in the doorway. Her hand was on the frame. She thought for 1 second of her father's silence. She thought for 1 second of her stepmother on the porch. She thought for 1 second of the dollar she had thrown at her father's boots and the way it had spun in the dust. She thought for 1 second of Hannah Hale, 24-year-old, running for a river in the dark with her dress on fire. She lifted her chin. "Mr. Hale." "Miss Vance." "Cookhouse breakfast is at 5. I will need a hand to bring water from the well and another to start the stove, and I will need to know how many mouths I am cooking for, because I do not yet know if Caleb's mama is a woman who eats 2 biscuits or 4. Rowan Hale looked at her. For the first time since she had walked through the gate of the Walking H, the man smiled. It was small. It was tired. It was the smile of a man who has been waiting 9 years to hear a particular sentence, and has just heard it. "For miss, Caleb's mama is a 4-biscuit woman. Then I will make 60 biscuits, mister, and we will see what is left by noon." She closed the door. She turned the key. She sat down on Hannah Hale's bed in Hannah Hale's room, and she pressed her hand flat over her own heart, and she said out loud to a woman she had never met, "Hannah, I am sorry I did not know you. I will try to be worth the bed." And in the dark, somewhere out on the road that ran east toward Coldwater, a man named Aldrich Warren was sitting at a supper table. He had already finished lighting a cigar with a hand that was steady, telling a foreman with a flat face and a lawyer with no teeth that by Wednesday night there would not be a walking H ranch standing on the prairie north of his town. The lamp in the cookhouse was lit at 4. Mara Vance had her sleeves pushed to the elbow before the rooster called the first time. Her hair was pinned tight. Her hands moved like a woman who had decided something in the dark and was not undeciding it now. "Eli." "Ma'am." "Wake Jesse. Tell him I want 2 buckets from the well, and a fire built up before the men come in." "Yes, ma'am." "And son." "Ma'am." "Wash your face. A man cooks better with a clean face." "I ain't a man, ma'am." "You are this morning. Go." Eli went. She had the 60 biscuits in her head before she touched the flour. She had the pork frying before the second rooster called. She had coffee on by the time the boots started on the porch. Tomas came in first. "Miss Vance?" "Mr. Reyes. I rode out for Caleb's mother an hour ago." "Tell me she's comin'." "She's comin'. Behind me. She said she had to fetch a Bible and a shotgun." "In that order?" "In that order, miss." Mara almost smiled. "What's her name?" "Della Henley." Della Henley. She said the name once the way a woman says a name she means to remember. "Set 6 plates, Mr. Reyes. The 7th is for Della." Della Henley walked through the cookhouse door at 4:45 with a Bible in her left hand and a shotgun in her right, and her son Caleb 3 steps behind her. She was a small woman. She was a thin woman. She had hair the color of iron, and a face that had been carved out of something harder than wood. She set the shotgun on the table. She set the Bible on the bench. She looked at Mara. "Miss Vance?" "Mrs. Henley." "My boy says you walked it." "I walked it. In the heat. In the heat. Past Croft. Past Croft." Della Henley crossed the cookhouse in 5 steps. She put her hand on Mara's wrist. Her hand was small and dry and warm. "Hannah Hale taught my Caleb his letters when he was 4-year-old. Hannah Hale is in the ground because a town like Coldwater decided a woman was worth less than a match. I have lived 9 year with that. I have lived 9 year waitin' for somebody to walk that road again and waitin' to see what kind of man Rowan Hale would be when she did." Mara did not speak. "Miss Vance." "Mrs. Henley." "You are the woman." "Ma'am." "You are the woman, child, and I am the second pair of hands in this kitchen until this thing is done. You hear me?" "I hear you, ma'am." "Then pass me the apron and tell me where the lard is, and let us feed the men who are about to ride for Coldwater." Rowan came in last. He had his gun belt on. He had a clean shirt. He had not slept, and his eyes said it. He stopped in the doorway when he saw Della. "Della." "Rowan? You brought your shotgun into my cookhouse." "I brought my shotgun into your cookhouse, Rowan Hale, and I will bring it into your sitting room, and I will sleep with it under my pillow until Mr. Aldrich Warren is in a Bartlett jail, or in a Bartlett grave, and you will not say a word to me about it. You hear?" "I hear you, Della." "Sit down, eat. You ain't riding to that town on an empty stomach." He sat down. He ate. The men ate around him in silence. Cy ate with his head down. Jesse ate with his eyes red-rimmed from crying he would not admit to. Walt, the gray-haired man, ate slow. Sam, the Bible leather man, said grace before he picked up his fork, and the grace was 3 sentences long, and the third sentence was, "Lord, ride with us today." Rowan set his fork down. "Cy." "Boss." "Saddle 2 horses." "Boss." "Tomas." "Boss." "You are in charge of this place while I am gone. You answer to nobody but me, and if I am not back by sundown, you answer to nobody but Della." "Boss." "Della." "Rowan." "If I am not back by sundown, You take Miss Vance and Eli and Caleb in the cellar, and Tomas holds the porch, and Walt holds the barn, and Sam holds the road, and Jesse rings the bell." "What bell, Rowan?" "The bell I am going to hang on the porch this morning before I ride. Jesse, you will hang it." "The rope runs through the kitchen window. Anybody at the kitchen window can pull that rope. Anybody at the road can hear it. The Walker's place is 2 miles south, and they will come if they hear it. The Beaudreau place is 3 miles west, and they will come too. The Walking H has neighbors Della. We have neighbors I have not called on in 9 years, but they are still neighbors, and a bell is a bell." Della Henley closed her eyes a half-second. "Rowan Hale." "Della. Hannah would be proud of you today." Rowan Hale did not answer. He put his hat on. He stood up. He looked at Mara. "Miss Vance." "Mr. Hale. I will be back by sundown." "Yes, sir." "If I am not." "Yes, sir." "You do not open this door for any man who is not me. You hear?" "I hear, sir." "Not Tomas, not Cy, not Caleb, not Sam, not Walt. You open this door for me and for me alone, and if I am not the man on the porch, you do not open the door." "Mr. Hale." "Say it back, miss." "I open the door for you, sir, and no other man." "Good." He turned to go. "Mr. Hale." He stopped. "Sir." "You come back." He looked at her. For a long second, he did not speak. Then he said, "Yes, miss." He went out. Sung. The sun was a hand's width above the prairie when Rowan Hale and Cy Bowden rode into Coldwater. The town was awake. The town was awake earlier than it should have been. There were men on 3 porches who were not men who usually sat on those porches at 7 in the morning. There was a rifle leaning against the post of the milliner's shop. There was a shotgun on the boardwalk outside the general store, and Pritchard was sweeping near it like a man who needed to be near a weapon and did not want to admit it. Rowan rode his horse straight down the middle of the street. He rode it at a walk. He rode it past the milliner's, past the boarding house where Mrs. Hollis had closed a door in Mara's face, past the hotel where the hotel man had laughed, past the general store where Pritchard stopped his broom and stared. He rode it all the way to the bank where the gold letters on the window read, "Warren and Associates," and he stopped his horse in front of the door. He did not dismount. "Aldrich Warren." His voice was not loud. It carried. "Aldrich Warren, come out!" The door did not open. "Aldrich Warren, I have ridden 4 miles with my foreman to call on you in the open street of your own town, in front of every man who works for you and every man who does not. I am a patient man, but I am not a man you keep waiting. Come out." The door did not open. Cy Bowden walked his horse forward 2 steps and turned it sideways across the boardwalk. He drew his rifle from the scabbard. He laid it across his saddle, easy the way a man lays down a tool he has not yet decided to use. The door opened. Aldrich Warren came out. He came out in the same fine coat he had worn in the heat the day before. He was alone on the boardwalk. But Rowan Hale knew, and Cy Bowden knew, and every man on that street knew that Warren was not alone. There were 2 men in the alley to the left. There was a man on the roof of the bank. There was a man in the doorway of the assayer's office across the street. That was all right. Rowan had counted them on the way in. "Mr. Hale." "Mr. Warren." "This is a pleasant surprise." "It ain't surprise, and it ain't pleasant, mister, and we both know it. So let's not waste sun." "By all means." Rowan leaned forward in the saddle. He rested his forearm on the horn. "Mr. Warren, sometime in the last 48 hours, 3 head of beef walked off Walking H land through 3 cuts in the north wire. The cuts was made by a man with a wire cutter. The hooves went east. East from my north line goes one place. It goes to your south range. I have a sheriff out of Bartlett riding to me on Wednesday with 2 deputies and the brand book. Bartlett Mr. Not Coldwater, because Coldwater's sheriff drinks your whiskey, and Bartlett's sheriff does not." Warren's smile did not move. "That is a serious accusation, Mr. Hale." "It is a fact, Mr. Warren. Whether it becomes a accusation depends on what a brand book says on Wednesday." "I see. There is more, mister." "Is there?" "There is. Last night, a young man rode to my porch and said you had said at your own supper table in front of your foreman and your lawyer that you would see my place burn before you let a fat woman make a fool of you in your own town. He said you used those words. He said you used the woman's name. He said you used my name. Warren's smile thinned a quarter of an inch. Young men say a great many things. Young men do. This particular young man is the son of a woman who used to ride for me. The young man is in my house this morning. His mother is in my kitchen. The young man's testimony will be heard in Bartlett on Wednesday by Sheriff Doyle, who has known the young man's mother since she was 12-year-old. The street had gone very quiet. Mr. Warren? Mr. Hale, I am going to tell you something, and I am going to tell it once, and I am going to tell it in front of these men who is your men and these men who is not. You are going to listen, and you are not going to interrupt, and when I am done, you are going to nod once, or you are going to go for the gun in your coat pocket, and the choice is yours and yours alone. You hear? Warren's hand had not moved, but every man on that street was now looking at his coat pocket. I am listening, Mr. Hale. Miss Mara Vance is in my employ. She is in my employ as a cook for $9 a week and a room in the main house. Her contract is signed and witnessed. The contract is in the office of my lawyer, Mr. Hopwell, in Bartlett, where it was carried by Tomas Reyes at first light. Any man who lays a hand on Miss Vance lays a hand on a member of the Walking H crew, and any man who lays a hand on a member of the Walking H crew will be answered for in court, if I can have it that way in a field, if I cannot. You hear. I hear you. I am not done. Continue. Any horse that crosses my fence with intent will be shot. Any match struck on my land will be answered with hot lead. Any man who rides up my road after dark with a rifle in his hand will not ride down it. And any rumor, Mr. Warren, that crosses my ear saying that Miss Vance is unwelcome in any town in this county will be traced to its source, and the source will receive a visit from me in person at his own door, and we will have a conversation about the cost of rumors. Mr. Hale, I am not done. Warren closed his mouth. You sent your man Croft up the road yesterday to put the fear into a woman who had walked 4 miles with a trunk. Croft turned. He turned because she did not. I do not know yet what kind of man Croft is, but I know what kind of man does not turn from a woman in the middle of a public road, and that man does not work for me, and after Wednesday, that man is not going to work for you neither, because cattle theft is a federal matter when the herd crosses a county line, and the brand book is going to be read by a federal marshal out of Topeka if Sheriff Doyle finds what I expect him to find. You hear what I'm saying, mister? Warren's face had gone the color of old paper. Mr. Hale, you are making a great many threats. I am making one threat, mister. I am making it 5 different ways so a man cannot misunderstand it. The threat is this. You leave Miss Vance alone. You leave my place alone. You leave my men alone. You do that, and I am a quiet neighbor. You do not do that, and I am not. And if I... There is one more thing. Warren waited. Rowan Hale leaned a little further over the saddle horn. His voice dropped. 9 years ago, a woman named Hannah Hale died in a fire that some men in a town, not unlike this one, set on a porch, not unlike that one. I know who lit the match. I know his name. I have known his name for 9 years. He died of typhus in Kansas City in 1879, and I did not have to lift a hand to him, and I have made my peace with that mister because the Lord is a quicker hand than I am. But I will tell you something for free, Mr. Warren. If a fire ever again rises on land, I own lit by a man in a town that hates a woman for the size of her body, or the color of her skin, or the cut of her dress, I will not wait for typhus. You hear me? Aldrich Warren did not speak. A bird called once far off. Warren nodded. It was a small nod. A nod of a man who is calculating, not a nod of a man who has surrendered. But it was a nod. Good day, Mr. Hale. Good day, Mr. Warren. Rowan Hale wheeled his horse. Cy Bowden wheeled his. They rode back down the middle of the street, past the bank, past the assayers, past the general store where Pritchard had not moved his broom, past the hotel where the hotel man stood in the doorway with his thumbs out of his vest, past the boarding house where Mrs. Hollis was watching from a second-story window, past the milliner's, where the two women in parasols were no longer laughing. They rode out of cold water at a walk. They did not break into a trot until the town was a half-mile behind them. Then they rode hard, because Rowan Hale had seen the look in Aldrich Warren's eyes, and the look in Aldrich Warren's eyes had said the man was not going to wait for Wednesday. The first shot came at 11 o'clock that morning. It came from the rise north of the cookhouse a quarter-mile out, and it took a chunk of wood out of the porch post 6 inches above Sam's right shoulder. Sam went flat on the porch. Della Henley pulled the bell rope through the kitchen window so hard the bell came off the eave and hit the floor, but it had already rung 4 times, and 4 times was enough, and the sound of it carried out across the prairie like a woman screaming. "Cellar," Della said. "Mrs. Henley." "Cellar Mara." "Mrs. Henley, Eli is in the barn." "Eli is with Walt. Walt has a rifle. Eli is safer than you, cellar." Mara did not go to the cellar. Mara went to the kitchen window. Mara went to the kitchen window because Della Henley's shotgun was leaning against the wall by the table, and Della Henley was holding the bell rope, and somebody had to hold the shotgun, and Mara had decided 2 days ago in a dust road outside Sedalia that she was done being the woman who let other women hold the weapons. "Mrs. Henley." "Mara, I am taking the shotgun." "Child, I am taking the shotgun, ma'am, because you are working the bell, and the bell is more important than the shotgun. And because if a man comes through that door, I am the one closest to the door, and I will not have the man come through the door with you in front of me." Della Henley looked at her for a second. Then she said, "It is loaded with double-aught. The kick will put you on the floor. Brace your shoulder against the doorframe and aim low, child. Aim for the belt buckle. A man hit in the belt buckle does not get up." "Yes, ma'am." Mara took the shotgun. She braced her shoulder against the doorframe. She aimed low. Out on the rise a second shot cracked, a third, a fourth. Then a fifth shot came from a different direction, and the fifth shot was not aimed at the porch. The fifth shot was aimed at the rise, and the fifth shot was followed by a man's scream far off and short, and then by silence. Tomas Reyes's voice came up from behind the well. "Got him, boss, boss." Mara's heart stopped, because Rowan Hale was not on the place. Mara turned her head a half-inch toward the kitchen window, and through the kitchen window on the road from Cold Water, riding hard. Riding harder than a man rides a horse he means to keep came 2 riders. 2 riders. Rowan Hale and Cy Bowden. A mile out, coming hard. "Mrs. Henley." "Mara." "Mr. Hale is on the road." "Lord be praised." "Mrs. Henley." "Mara." "There are men in the brush north of the cookhouse, and Mr. Hale is a mile out, and the men in the brush are between us and him." Della Henley pulled the bell rope twice more. "Then we will hold the porch until he gets here, child. We will hold the porch, and Tomas will hold the well, and Walt will hold the barn, and Sam, you alive." Sam's voice came from flat on the porch. "Alive, missus. Took splinters in the cheek. Ain't shot." "Sam, can you crawl to the corner?" "Can crawl to Kansas, missus." "Crawl to the corner. There is a man coming up the south side of the cookhouse. I heard the brush move." "On my way, missus." Mara stood at the door frame with the shotgun braced. Her hand was steady. She did not know when her hand had got steady. A boot scraped on the porch boards. A man's voice low near. "Pretty lady. Pretty fat lady. Come on out." Mara did not speak. The boot scraped again. A hand reached around the doorframe. A hand with a knife in it. Mara fired. The kick put her on the floor exactly the way Della Henley had said it would. The shotgun blast took the door off the hinge. The man on the other side of the door took the second barrel before he could scream, and there was no second scream, and there was no third boot scrape, and there was a sound on the porch that Mara would carry in her ear the rest of her life, and she did not yet know that she would carry it, but she would. Della Henley reloaded the shotgun in 9 seconds. She handed it back to Mara on the floor. "Up, child." "Mrs. Henley." "Up. There is a second man, and you are the woman with the shotgun, and the second man does not yet know you have already fired." Mara stood up. Out on the road the hooves were close now. Close enough that she could hear Rowan Hale's voice. And the voice was a voice she had not yet heard from him, and the voice was screaming her name. "Mara! Not Miss Vance! Not Mara Vance! Mara!" She braced against the doorframe. She aimed low. She waited. And from the rise behind the cookhouse, a single voice rose up. A man's voice, ragged, desperate, calling out across the prairie in the high, clear summer noon. And the voice was not Rowan Hale's, and it was not Tomas Reyes's, and it was not Cy Bowden's, and it was not Walt's, or Sam's, or Jesse's, or Caleb's. The voice was Aldrich Warren's, and what Aldrich Warren was screaming hoarse and broken, and from somewhere on his belly in the brush at the top of the rise was the one word Mara Vance had walked 4 miles in the heat to hear from no man's mouth ever again in her life. Mercy. The word hung in the high summer air over the walking H like a thing that had no right to be there. Mercy. Mara Vance heard it. Della Henley heard it. Tomas Reyes heard it from behind the well, and his rifle did not lower a half-inch. Walt heard it from the barn. Sam heard it from the corner of the porch with splinters in his cheek and one eye half shut from the blood. And Rowan Hale, riding up the road at a hard gallop, with Cy Bowden 3 lengths behind him, heard it last, and heard it loudest, because he had not yet seen the porch, and he did not yet know whether the woman in his kitchen was alive or dead. "Mara. In here, mister." He came off the horse before the horse stopped moving. He came up the porch steps 3 at a time. He saw the door off the hinge. He saw the man on the boards. He saw the second man, the one Sam had crawled to the corner for, the one who had never made it past the south side of the cookhouse, face down in the dirt, with Sam's knife in the back of his neck. He stepped over the first man. He came through the doorway with his pistol drawn. "Mara. Mr. Hale. You hit—" "I ain't hit." Della. "I ain't hit Rowan." Sam. "Splinters, boss. Skin's tore, but the bone ain't." Rowan stood a half-second in the kitchen with the pistol in his hand and his chest moving like a bellows, and Mara saw the man's face for the first time without the iron on it. And what was on his face was not the face of a rancher, and not the face of a foreman, and not the face of a man who had ridden into cold water and stared down Aldrich Warren. What was on his face was a brother looking for his sister. She knew the look. She had worn it herself once in a road outside Boonville, looking for a child who was not hers and not coming back. "Mr. Hale. Miss Vance. He is on the rise. I heard him. He is hollerin' mercy, mister. I heard him." Rowan Hale looked at her, and the look went past her face and went somewhere a long way back, and then it came forward again. "Stay on the porch, Miss Vance. Reload." "Yes, sir." Della. "Rowan. You stay with her." "I stay with her." "Tomas." "Boss." "With me." "Boss." "Cy." "Boss." "You hold the road. Anybody comes up that road that ain't a Walker or a Boudreaux, they answer to you before they answer to me." "Boss." Rowan stepped back over the body in the doorway. He came down the porch steps slow. He walked toward the rise. The man Aldrich Warren had brought with him to the rise behind the cookhouse had been 7 by Tomas Reyes's count from the well. Tomas had dropped 1 with the first shot. Sam had dropped 1 with the knife. Mara had dropped 1 with the shotgun. Walt had dropped 1 from the barn that Mara had not seen. That left 3. 2 of the 3 were running. The third was Aldrich Warren on his belly in the brush at the top of the rise, with a bullet from Tomas Reyes' rifle in the meat of his thigh. Rowan Hale walked up the rise at a walk. He did not run. He did not draw down. He walked. When he got to the top of the rise, Warren was holding his thigh with both hands. His coat was ruined. His hat was gone. The pistol he had been carrying had spun 3 feet away into the dust, and he had not crawled for it. "Hale, quiet." "Hale, I." "Mr. Warren, quiet." Tomas Reyes came up the rise behind Rowan with the rifle. He did not aim it at Warren. He did not need to. He laid it across his arm easy, the way a man holds a tool he has not yet decided to use. Rowan Hale crouched down beside Aldrich Warren. He took his time. "Mr. Warren." "Hail in the name of God." "Mr. Warren, you said the word once. Mercy. I heard it. Every man and woman on my place heard it. Della Henley heard it. And Della Henley raised her boy on a Bible. The word is on the prairie now, mister. The word is loose. You cannot pull it back." Hale. "Now I am going to ask you a question. I am going to ask it once. The answer to this question will decide whether you ride out of here in a saddle or in a wagon bed." Warren's face was the color of curdled milk. "Ask. The cuts in my north fence. Who cut them?" Hale. "Who cut them, Mr. Warren?" Warren's mouth worked. "Croft." "Croft cut them on whose order?" "Mine." "Say the words, mister." "On my order. I gave the order. I gave the order to Croft on Sunday night. The cuts was made Monday before dawn. The 3 head was driven to my south range. They are in a draw with a creek. The brand has not been altered. There has not been time." "Who else heard you give the order?" "My foreman, my lawyer, a man named Henley." "Caleb Henley?" "Yes." "The boy who rode to my porch in the dark?" "Yes." "Mr. Warren." "Hale. You will say all of that on Wednesday in front of Sheriff Doyle out of Bartlett. You will say it sitting up. You will say it sober. You will sign a paper saying it. You will not run. You will not send a man in your place. You will sit in your own chair, in your own bank, with your own hand on your own pen, and you will sign. You hear. Hale my leg. Your leg will be tended. Your leg will be tended by Della Henley, who is a midwife and has set bones since before you owned a building in this county. Your leg will not be tended by your own doctor in your own town, because your own doctor in your own town is a man I do not yet trust. You will be in the bunkhouse at the Walking H for 2 nights. You will be guarded. You will be fed. You will be alive on Wednesday morning. You hear, I hear. Now say the rest, mister. What rest? The fire, Mr. Warren. The fire you spoke of at your supper table. Say it. Aldrich Warren closed his eyes. For a long second on the rise he did not speak. The sun was straight up. The flies had started to come. Mr. Warren. I said it. Say it again. I said I would see this place burn. Why? Because. Why, Mr. Warren? The town is listening. My men is listening. Della Henley is listening from my porch with a Bible in her lap. Why? Aldrich Warren opened his eyes. What was in his eyes was not the look of a man who had been beaten in a fight. It was the look of a man who had been a small man for so long he had forgotten any other shape. Because I built this town, Hale. I built it from a crossroads with a trading post. I named the streets. I bought the bank. I picked the sheriff. I picked the preacher. I picked who lived in this town and who did not. And then a woman walked up the road 4 miles in the heat, and she did not turn when I sent Croft, and she did not turn when Mrs. Hollis closed a door, and she did not turn when Pritchard pointed at the road, and a town that I built turned to look at her instead of at me. Because she would not turn, and I could not have it. I could not have a woman in my town who would not turn. Rowan Hale stood up slow. He looked down at Aldrich Warren a long second. Mr. Hale, that is the smallest reason a man ever burned a house for. That is the smallest reason a man ever lit a match in the history of this country. You are a small man, Aldrich Warren. You was born small, and you have stayed small, and the size of your bank does not change the size of you. Tomas. Boss? Get him on a horse. Get him to the bunkhouse. Send Jesse for Della. Boss. Rowan Hale walked back down the rise. Oh. Della Henley took the bullet out of Aldrich Warren's thigh with a knife she had sharpened on the cookhouse step, and she did not give him whiskey, and she did not give him laudanum, and she did not say a kind word the whole time, but she did the work clean, and she set the wound, and she wrapped it, and she stood up at the end and washed her hands in the basin, and she said only one thing to him before she walked out of the bunkhouse. Mr. Warren. Mrs. My boy Caleb is 14-year-old. You sent him to ride for you when he was 12. You knew his mother was a widow. You knew his mother was poor. You knew his mother could not say no. You will pay him a wage from this day forward in a letter in your hand, and the wage will be $10 a month, and the wage will be paid until he is 18-year-old. The letter will be wrote tonight. I will witness it. Mr. Hale will witness it. Sheriff Doyle will receive a copy of it on Wednesday. You hear, Mrs. Henley, You hear, mister? I hear. Then you write. She walked out. She did not look back. The sheriff out of Bartlett rode in on Tuesday afternoon, a day earlier than expected, with 2 deputies and a federal marshal he had picked up in Topeka on the way. The federal marshal was a man named Harlan Brick, who had a Cherokee mother and a long memory and a reputation in 3 states. He listened to Rowan Hale for an hour on the porch. He listened to Caleb Henley for 40 minutes after that. He listened to Tomas Reyes about the cuts in the wire. He walked the north fence and looked at the cuts himself. He walked the draw on Warren's South Range and counted 3 head with a walking H brand on the hip and not a mark of alteration on them. He came back to the walking H at sundown, and he sat in Rowan Hale's kitchen with his hat on the table, and he ate 2 bowls of Mara Vance's stew, and he said after the second bowl with his spoon, laid down beside the bowl, Miss Vance. Mr. Brick. Where did you learn to cook like this? My mother, sir. Where is your mother? In a grave outside Boonville, sir, 9 years ago this October. What did your mother die of? A man who would not pay a doctor for a woman, sir. Harlan Brick nodded slow. Miss Vance, I have ate at the table of a senator in Washington. I have ate at the table of a railroad president in Chicago. I have ate at the table of a Cherokee chief who owned 5,000 head of cattle in the nation. I have not ate stew like this in any of those places. Your mother is in heaven, and your mother knows what she taught you. You take that with you. Mara Vance set down her ladle. She did not cry. She had said she was done crying for a while, and the while had not yet ended. But she nodded, and she said, Thank you, mister. And Harlan Brick said, No, ma'am, thank you. They took Aldrich Warren to Bartlett on Wednesday morning in a wagon, sitting up sober with a bandage on his thigh and his lawyer beside him, and he signed the paper in front of Sheriff Doyle in the courthouse, and the paper was witnessed by Harlan Brick and by Rowan Hale and by Della Henley. And the paper said what it said, and the trial was set for the first Tuesday in September, and Aldrich Warren was held without bail because cattle theft across a county line is a federal matter, and Harlan Brick had said so. And what Harlan Brick said in 3 states was generally what was done. The town of Coldwater did not survive Aldrich Warren's arrest by more than a week. Mrs. Hollis closed the boarding house on a Friday and was gone to Kansas City by Monday. The hotel man sold the hotel to a widow from Topeka who had run a restaurant in the war and who hired 3 women that Coldwater had previously declined to serve. Pritchard kept the general store open, but he kept it open with his hands shaking and his eyes on the door, and on the second Sunday after Warren's arrest, he came up the road to the walking H on a borrowed mule, and he stood in front of Rowan Hale on the porch with his hat in his hand, and he said 3 sentences that Rowan Hale repeated to no man for the rest of his life, and then he rode back to town and reopened his store on Monday with a sign in the window that said, Every customer served, no exceptions. The 2 women in parasols on the milliner's porch did not speak to Mara Vance for the rest of their lives. That was all right. Mara Vance had not gone to Coldwater for the parasols. She had gone, it turned out, for the cookhouse. The cookhouse on the walking H became, in the weeks after Aldrich Warren went to Bartlett, a place where things happened that had not happened on that prairie in 9 years. Della Henley came to breakfast every morning with her Bible. Caleb Henley took his lessons at the kitchen table after supper 3 nights a week, taught by Walt, the gray-haired man who had been a schoolteacher in Indiana before the war, and had not told a soul about it for 20 years. Eli came up from town on Saturdays and stayed until Sundays, and on the 3rd Saturday his mother came with him, and on the 4th Saturday his grandmother came, and on the 5th Saturday his grandmother stayed. Tomas Reyes's wife came up from her people's place near the Cimarron, with 3 small children and a milk goat and a guitar, and Tomas Reyes' wife and Mara Vance worked together in the cookhouse 3 days a week, and the children of Tomas Reyes' wife learned to call Mara Vance Tia, which is the Spanish word for aunt. And Mara Vance did not have the heart to tell them she was nobody's aunt. And after a while, she stopped trying to tell them. And after a longer while, she stopped feeling like she needed to tell them, because they had decided what she was, and what they had decided she was had turned out to be true. Cy Bowden did not become a kind man. Cy Bowden became a man who, on the second Tuesday after the trial date was set, came into the cookhouse before sunup and stood at the door with his hat in his hand and said, "Miss Vance, Mr. Cy, I owe you an apology. You said you wasn't going to make one. I said I wasn't going to make one. I have changed my mind." "On account of what?" "On account of you put a man on the floor with a shotgun who was coming through that door for you, and on account of I said something small to you on a Tuesday, and on account of the size of what you done since does not match the size of what I said, and a man who does not change his mind in the face of a fact like that is not a man, miss. He is a stump." "Mr. Cy, Miss Vance, I accept your apology." "Thank you, miss. You will eat at this table tonight." "I always eat at this table, miss." "You will eat at this table tonight on the right side of the salt cellar, mister, where Mr. Hale eats." "Mr. Hale is gone to Bartlett until Friday. The seat is open. It will be your seat tonight. You will not sit there to take his place. You will sit there to honor his absence, because a foreman holds his boss's seat warm, and that is what foremen do, and that is what you are now." Cy Bowden did not move a half second. "Miss, Mr. Cy, I ain't a foreman." "You are by Friday, mister. Mr. Hale told me on Sunday before he rode. He said it at this table. He said, 'Miss Vance, I am going to make Cy my foreman, and I would like you to tell him at the right moment, because the right moment will come from you and not from me.'" "He said that." "He said that, mister?" "Why from you?" "I do not know, mister. He is a quiet man. He does not always tell a body why." Cy Bowden looked at the floor. He looked at the floor a long second. Then he looked up. "Miss Vance, Mr. Cy, I will sit in that seat tonight. I will hold it warm. I will not take a thing on the plate that is not mine, and I will pass the gravy first, and I will not speak unless a man speaks to me. I will be the foreman of the Walking H by Friday, and I will be the foreman of the Walking H until Mr. Hale does not want me to be no more, and I will be a man you do not have to put on the floor with a shotgun ever again. You have my word, miss." "I have your word, Mr. Cy." He put his hat back on. He went out. Amen. That same Friday evening, Rowan Hale came home from Bartlett. He came home alone. He came home on a horse that was tired in a coat that had ridden 3 days through dust, with a paper folded in his breast pocket that was the docket assignment for the September trial. He did not go to the bunkhouse. He did not go to the barn. He came up the porch steps, and he opened the kitchen door, and the kitchen was full of the smell of bread, and Mara Vance was at the basin with her sleeves pushed to the elbow and her hair coming out of its pins. "Mr. Hale?" "Miss Vance." He stood in the doorway a long second. She turned. Her hands were wet. She did not dry them. "Mr. Hale?" "Mara." She did not breathe a half second. "Sir." "I have rode 3 days." "I know, sir. I have rode 3 days, and on the road I have thought about a thing." "Sir?" "I have thought about my sister Hannah, who I have told you of." "Yes, sir." "And I have thought about my mother, who is also gone. And I have thought about my father, who is also gone. And I have thought about every woman on this place, livin' and dead, and what each of those women would have said to me if I had not said what I have come into this kitchen to say." Mara Vance set her hands on the rim of the basin. She did not speak. "Mara." "Sir?" "I am 44-year-old. I have not asked a woman a question of this kind in 20 years. The woman I asked 20 years ago said no, and I do not blame her because I was a hard man at 24, and I am a quieter man now, but I am not a softer one, and a woman with sense knows the difference." "Mr. Hale." "I am not done." "Sir, I am not asking you to answer tonight. I am not asking you to answer this month. I am asking you to know the question is in this kitchen, and the question will stay in this kitchen for as long as you need it to stay, and the question is not a price on your work, and it is not a price on your room, and it is not a price on your bread. The question is its own thing. You hear, "I hear, sir. Mara Vance, Mr. Hale. I am asking you when you are ready, and not before, to be my wife." Mara Vance stood with her hands on the rim of the basin, and she did not speak a long second. She did not speak because every word she had heard from a man's mouth her whole life, every word from her father and her stepmother and the boys at the schoolhouse, and the deacon's wife at the church supper, and Mrs. Hollis at the boarding house door, and the hotel man with his thumbs in his vest, and Pritchard and Croft, and Aldrich Warren on the rise, every word had been a word that had asked her to be smaller than she was. This was the first word that had asked her to be exactly the size she was. She did not know how to stand up under it. She held the basin. She held the basin a long second. Then she lifted her head, and she looked at Rowan Hale across the kitchen, and her eyes were wet, but her voice was not. "Mr. Hale?" "Mara." "I will give you my answer. When you are ready." "I am ready, sir." He waited. She breathed once. "My answer is yes." Rowan Hale stood in the doorway a long second. He took his hat off. He set it on the table. He crossed the kitchen in 3 steps, and he did not touch her, and he did not embrace her, and he did not lean down to kiss her, because he was a quiet man. And a quiet man knows that a yes from a woman who has walked 4 miles in the heat is a yes that does not need to be hurried. He stood in front of her. He held out his hand. His hand was the size of a dinner plate, and there was a scar across the knuckle of the 3rd finger from a wire that had cut him in 1872. She put her hand in his. Her hand was wet from the basin. He did not seem to notice. Mara Vance. Rowan Hale. "There is one thing I will say to you, and I will say it once, and you will hear me say it, and then we will not speak of it again until you wish to. Sir, you are not too much. You have never been too much. The world has been too small for you. That is a different thing. And the world will not be too small for you anymore because you are home." Mara Vance, who had said she was done crying for a while, found that the while had ended. She cried. She cried with her hand in Rowan Hale's hand, and her other hand on the rim of the basin, and her hair coming out of its pins. And she cried for her mother in the grave outside Boonville, and for Hannah Hale on the road by the river, and for every woman in every town who had been told she was the wrong shape for the world. And Rowan Hale did not let go of her hand, and the bread in the oven did not burn, because Della Henley, who had been listening from the hallway with a perfectly straight face, walked past them at exactly the right moment and pulled the loaves out and set them on the rack to cool, and walked back out without saying a single word, because Della Henley was a woman who knew how to read a kitchen. Outside on the porch, the bell that Rowan Hale had hung on the eve for war hung silent in the warm summer dusk. It would not need to ring again that year. The summer turned over slow on the walking H. Mara Vance learned in the weeks after Rowan Hale's question what it meant to be a woman who had been asked, not told. She kept her own room. She kept her own key. She kept the cookhouse on her own hours, and the household on her own schedule. And Rowan Hale did not enter the kitchen before 5, and he did not speak of the wedding until she did. And the not speaking was the thing that taught her slow and quiet that the man had meant every word. Della Henley moved into the south room of the main house on a Tuesday in mid-July with a trunk and a Bible and the shotgun, and she did not ask, and Rowan Hale did not say a word, because Rowan Hale was a man who knew when a Della Henley had decided a thing. Caleb Henley took the foreman's old room in the bunkhouse, which made him the youngest hand on the place with his own 4 walls, and the boy did not swagger about it because his mother had threatened him with the back of her hand if he so much as smiled crooked at the privilege. And Cy Bowden, who was foreman, now sat on the right side of the salt cellar at supper, and passed the gravy first, and did not speak unless spoken to, and rode the fence line at sunup every morning with his rifle across his lap, and a look on his face that said plain that the next man who cut a wire on walking H-land was not going to walk away from the cuttin'. It was on a Thursday in the 3rd week of July that the letter came. Tomas Reyes brought it up from the post office in Bartlett in a saddlebag with 2 other letters and a Bible. Della Henley had ordered for Caleb. He set it on the kitchen table in front of Mara Vance, and he tipped his hat, and he did not leave. Miss Vance. Mr. Reyes. That letter has come from cold water. It has. It has come from a hand I do not know. Then we will see whose hand it is, mister. She opened it. She read it. She read it twice. She set it down on the table, and she put her hand flat on top of it, and she did not speak a long second. Mr. Reyes. Miss Vance. Send for Mr. Hale. He is in the south pasture, miss. Send for him. Tomas Reyes went. Rowan Hale read the letter standing in the kitchen with his hat still on his head, which he never did, and when he was done, he did not set it on the table the way Mara had. He folded it in half. He folded it in quarters. He put it in his breast pocket. He took his hat off. Mara. Rowan. Read it to me again, the part in the middle. She picked it up. She unfolded it. She read, "It would be the great honor of the Coldwater Ladies' Aid Society to invite Miss Mara Vance to enter the annual county fair cooking contest in the name of her place of employ, the Walking H Ranch, on the second Saturday of August. The prize this year is a purse of $50 in silver and an engraved skillet. The judges this year is 3 women from the church and 1 man from the bank. The entrance is $2, which the society will pay on Miss Vance's behalf as a courtesy if she accepts. We humbly request her answer by the 1st of August. Signed, Mrs. Beulah Crane, Secretary." Beulah Crane. You know her, Rowan? I know her. She was a friend of Hannah's. She did not stand up for Hannah when the town came for her. She has lived with that 9 years. I did not know if it had moved her or hardened her, and now I know. Which is it, Rowan? Moved her, Mara? The letter has moved her. The letter is a hand reaching out across a long bad silence, and the hand is shaken, because Beulah Crane is not a brave woman. But she has wrote the letter, and the letter is on this table, and the question is, what you are going to do with it. I do not know what I'm going to do with it, Rowan. You do not have to know tonight. I know tonight, Rowan. I just do not know if I can say it yet. He waited. She put her hands flat on the table. She breathed. Rowan. Mara, I have walked into cold water once on my own 2 feet, and the town did not want me. I have not been back. I have not had a reason to go back. I do not know if I have a reason now. I do not know if I want to stand in a tent in front of a town that closed 3 doors in my face and let a boy throw dirt at my back, and I do not know if I can stand it, Rowan, and I am telling you the truth, which I have not always told a man, and I am telling you because you are the one I am telling the truth to from here forward. Mara. Rowan. You do not have to go. I know. And you do not have to not go. I know. And whichever you do, I will ride beside you on the road, and I will sit in the front row of the tent, if you go, and I will pour you coffee on this porch if you do not. And either road is the right road, because you are the woman walking it. You hear? She put her hand over his hand on the table. She did not speak a long second. Rowan? Mara. I am going. All right. I am going because the boy who threw the dirt is 12-year-old now, and the boy is going to be at the fair, and his mother is going to be at the fair, and I do not want the boy to grow into a man who throws dirt, and the only way I know to stop that is to stand in a tent and let the boy taste my biscuit, and the biscuit will say a thing to him that I cannot say with my mouth. All right. And I am going because Hannah Hale did not get to go to a fair, Rowan, and a woman who walked up the road to this gate after Hannah did has the right to go to a fair on Hannah's behalf. And I will go on Hannah's behalf, and I will tell Beulah Crane I am going on Hannah's behalf, and Beulah Crane will hear it, and she will know what I mean. Rowan Hale closed his hand over hers. All right, Mara. We will go. Yeah. She wrote the answer that night. She wrote it short. She wrote it plain. She wrote it in her own hand because Della Henley offered to write it for her, and Mara Vance said, Della, this letter is a letter that has my hand on it, or it does not go. The letter said, Mrs. Crane, I will come to your fair. I will bring my mother's biscuit and my grandmother's pork pie and a sweet potato custard that is my own. I will pay my own $2. I will stand in your tent on the second Saturday of August, and I will stand there in the name of the Walking H, and in the name of Hannah Hale, who was your friend, and who did not get to stand in a tent. Yours sincerely, Mara Vance. She signed it. She gave it to Tomas Reyes on Friday morning. Tomas Reyes carried it to the post office in Bartlett, and not in cold water, because Tomas Reyes had not been in cold water in 7 years and did not intend to start. The second Saturday of August came hot. Mara Vance had been in the cookhouse since 2 in the morning. She had 3 crates packed by sunup. The biscuits was wrapped in a clean cloth. The pork pie was in a pan with a folded towel over it. The sweet potato custard was in a deep dish in a basket lined with straw, because a custard does not love a wagon. She wore a dress she had not worn in 11 years. It was a dress her mother had sewed for her in 1872, for a wedding she did not get to attend because the bride's family had withdrawn the invitation when they saw the size of her at the church door. The dress was gray. It was plain. It had a pearl button at the throat and a pearl button at each cuff. Her mother had stitched the hem by hand on a Sunday afternoon, and the stitches was even, and the dress had been folded in tissue paper at the bottom of the trunk for 11 years. And Mara Vance had not been able to throw it away, and she had not been able to wear it. And on the second Saturday of August, she took it out and she put it on, and it fit. It fit. She stood in front of Hannah Hale's small mirror, and she looked at herself in her mother's dress, and she said out loud, "Mama, I am wearing it." And Della Henley in the doorway said, "Child, Della, your mother is in heaven, and your mother sees you, and your mother is on her feet. Dell, on her feet, child, standin'. Now come on, the wagon is hitched." They rode into cold water at 9:15. Rowan Hale drove. Mara Vance sat beside him. Della Henley sat in the bed with the crates and her shotgun across her lap, because Della Henley was not a woman who rode into a town without a shotgun across her lap, and nobody on the wagon had asked her to leave it. Cy Bowden rode behind on his horse. Tomas Reyes rode beside Cy. Walt and Sam and Jesse and Caleb rode in 2 pairs, 10 lengths back, and the 8 of them, coming down the main street of cold water in the late summer morning, made a sound on the boards of that town that the town had not heard in 9 years. People came out of doorways. Mrs. Hollis was gone, but the new owner of the boarding house was on the porch, and she lifted her hand. Mara lifted hers back. The hotel was a restaurant now run by the widow from Topeka, and the widow stood in the doorway with 3 of her cooks behind her, and one of the cooks was a woman Coldwater had previously declined to serve, and the woman was crying without making a sound. Pritchard was on the porch of his store with his hat in his hand. He did not lift it. He held it. He stood there with it in his hand the whole time the wagon went past, and when the wagon was past, he sat down hard on the step of his own store, and he put his face in his hat. The 2 women in parasols was not there. That was all right. The boy who had thrown the dirt was there. He was 12-year-old now. He had grown thin and tall. He stood on the boardwalk outside the milliner's with his hands in his pockets, and his mother was beside him with her arms folded the way she had folded them on the porch a year ago. And the boy was looking at Mara Vance, and the boy's face was a face Mara Vance did not know how to read. She held his eyes a half second. She nodded once. The boy nodded back. His mother did not. That was all right too. The tent was on the green at the south end of town. There was already a line. Mara Vance unloaded her crates with Della and Caleb, and she carried the custard herself because a custard is a thing. A woman carries herself, if the woman cares about the custard, and she set up at her assigned table, which was the 3rd table on the left, between a Mrs. Tilden, who was a sweet old woman with a famous lemon cake, and a Mr. Aaron Lowry, who was a young man with a goose liver pâté that smelled to Mara Vance like a man who had not been told no by a woman in his life. Mrs. Tilden put her hand on Mara's wrist. "Miss Vance?" "Mrs. Tilden. My grandmother knew your mother." Mara stopped moving. "Ma'am, my grandmother knew your mother, child, in Boonville before the war. My grandmother said your mother could make a biscuit that would make a Methodist cry. My grandmother told me about your mother when I was 8-year-old. I have made my own biscuits 1,000 times in my life, child, and I have never once thought mine was as good as your mother's. I am old, and I am sentimental, and I do not expect to win this cake contest today. But I came over to your table, child, Because I wanted to tell you that your mother is known in this world by women who never met her on account of biscuits she made 50 years ago. You hear? Mara Vance did not cry. She had cried in the kitchen with Rowan Hale, and that crying had been a different crying, and she did not have a second one in her today. But she put her hand over Mrs. Tilden's hand, and she said, "Ma'am, I thank you. I thank you for my mother. She was a woman who made biscuits when men was watching her cry, and she did not let the men see, and she did not let the biscuits suffer for it. I will try to do the same today." Mrs. Tilden patted her wrist. "You will, child, you will." The judges came at 11, 3 women from the church, 1 man from the bank. The man from the bank was a thin gray man who had taken over Aldrich Warren's bank in trust until the September trial, and his name was Mr. Edmund Cobb, and he was by every account in the county a fair man. They tasted Mrs. Tilden's lemon cake first. They tasted the goose liver pâté second. They tasted a corn pudding from the 3rd table. They tasted a smoked ham from the 4th. They came to Mara Vance's table at 20 minutes past 11. Mara Vance did not speak. She had decided on the wagon that she was not going to speak. She had decided that a biscuit speaks for itself, and that a woman who has made the biscuit does not need to add a word. The first judge, a Mrs. Pell, took a biscuit. She broke it in half. She raised it to her nose. She raised it to her mouth. She bit. She chewed. She closed her eyes. She did not speak. The second judge, a Mrs. Yardley, took a piece of pork pie. She lifted it on the silver fork the society had provided. She put it in her mouth. She chewed. She did not close her eyes. But she set down the fork in the silence, and she folded her hands in her lap, and she said low, almost to herself, "Lord." The third judge, a Mrs. Beulah Crane, who had wrote the letter, who had been Hannah Hale's friend, who had not stood up 9 years ago, and had lived 9 years with the not standing up, took a spoon of the sweet potato custard. She put it in her mouth. She did not chew because a custard is not a chewing food. She closed her eyes. A tear came out of the corner of her left eye and ran straight down her cheek and dropped off her chin onto the white tablecloth, and she did not lift a hand to wipe it. She opened her eyes. She looked at Mara Vance across the table. She said, "Miss Vance." "Mrs. Crane." "Hannah used to make a custard like this." "Did she, ma'am?" "She did, child. She made it for the Sunday school. She made it for the fair 2 years before she died. She did not win that year. She was beat by a woman from Bartlett with a peach cobbler. Hannah said after the contest that a custard does not win against a cobbler because a cobbler has a crust, and a crust is a louder thing than a custard, and the world is louder than it ought to be. She said that to me, child, in this very tent, in 1869. Mara Vance held the older woman's eyes. She did not speak. "Miss Vance?" "Mrs. Crane." "This year the custard wins." The fourth judge, Mr. Edmund Cobb, who had not yet tasted anything from Mara Vance's table, set his pencil down on his paper. "Mrs. Crane." "Mr. Cobb." "I have not tasted." "You will taste, Mr. Cobb, and then we will all 4 of us decide. But I am telling you now in this tent in front of this woman in the presence of God, and Mrs. Pell, and Mrs. Yardley, and the ghost of Hannah Hale who is in this tent today, whether you can see her or not, that this year the custard wins." Mr. Edmund Cobb tasted the custard. He chewed it slow, even though it was not a chewing food. He set the spoon down. He did not speak. He picked up his pencil. He wrote a single word on his paper. The word was Vance. Tatianak. They announced it at 1 o'clock. The crowd outside the tent had grown by then, because word had moved through the fair the way word moves through a fair on the feet of children and the tongues of women and the silences of men. Mr. Edmund Cobb stood at the front of the tent with the paper in his hand. The judges of the Coldwater County Fair cooking contest of 1881 have reached a decision. The decision is unanimous. The winner of the purse of $50 in silver and the engraved skillet in the name of her place of employ, the Walking H Ranch, is Miss Mara Vance. The crowd was quiet a half second. Then a single voice. Della Henley's voice from the back of the tent, where Della Henley was standing with her shotgun still in the wagon and her Bible in her left hand, said loud and clear, "Praise be to God." And the crowd answered her, not all at once, not in a single voice, but in a slow rising sound, like a wave coming up a river, person by person, until the tent was full of the sound of a town clapping for a woman. A town had once closed 3 doors against. Mara Vance walked to the front of the tent. She took the purse. She took the skillet. She stood there a half second and the tent went quiet because the tent could see that the woman was about to speak, and the tent had been told that the woman did not intend to, but the woman had changed her mind. "Folks," her voice carried, "my name is Mara Vance. I came to this town a year ago this month with a trunk on my shoulder and a recipe book under my arm. This town closed 3 doors against me before noon. A boy threw a clod of dirt at my back, and his mother smiled when he done it. A man named Aldrich Warren, who is in a Bartlett jail today, sent 3 riders up the road to put the fear in me, and I would not turn. I would not turn because I had been turned out of 3 towns before this one, and I had decided on the road outside Sedalia that I was done turnin'. I have been called fat in this town. I have been called fat in my father's house and in my stepmother's and in every town I have walked through from Boonville to Coldwater. I have been told since I was 8-year-old that the world was not built for a woman of my size and that I should make myself smaller, and that if I could not make myself smaller, I should at least make myself quiet, and at the very least, I should not expect to be loved. I am here to tell you, in this tent, on this Saturday, with this purse in my hand, and this skillet under my arm, and my mother's dress on my back, and my grandmother's pie on that table. I am not too much. I have never been too much. The world has been too small for me, and that is a different thing, and I am done shrinking to fit a world that was built crooked. I am going to take up the room I take up. I am going to eat the food I eat. I am going to love the man I love, and the man is going to love me back, and we are going to live on a place north of this town where the gate opens for women who walk up the road, and the gate will keep opening as long as I have breath in my body and Rowan Hale has breath in his. And I am going to tell you one more thing, folks, and then I am going to step down off this platform and go home to my cookhouse, because my cookhouse is waiting on me and a kitchen does not run itself. A woman is worth what she decides she is worth. Not what her father says, not what her stepmother says, not what a town says, not what a banker says with his hand on the deed of every shop on the street. A woman is worth what she decides in the road outside Sedalia on the day she throws the dollar at her father's boots. A woman is worth what she decides on the porch of a boarding house when a thin woman closes a door in her face. A woman is worth what she decides on the gate of a ranch she has never seen when she stands in the dust and says her name to a man twice her size and waits for him to open the latch. A woman is worth what she decides, and I have decided. I am Mara Vance. I cook for the Walking H. I am going to be Mrs. Rowan Hale on the first Saturday of October, in a small wedding, in a small church in Bartlett, and you are all of you welcome to come, even the ones who closed the doors, even the ones who threw the dirt, because I am not in the business of turning anybody out. I have been turned out. I know the road. I do not send another body down it. And that is the truth, folks. That is the whole of the truth. And I thank you for the purse, and I thank you for the skillet, and I thank you for the listening, and I'm going home now. She stepped down. She walked through the crowd. The crowd parted for her. The boy who had thrown the dirt was at the edge of the crowd, and he stepped forward and he put out his hand. He had a piece of paper in his hand. The paper said, in a child's careful pencil, "I am sorry, ma'am." Mara Vance took the paper. She read it. She folded it. She put it in the pocket of her mother's dress. "Son." "Ma'am." "What is your name?" "William, ma'am. William Carter." "William Carter." "Yes, ma'am." "You are forgiven, son. You was forgiven a year ago. I just did not have a way to tell you. You take this paper out of my pocket and you keep it and you carry it the rest of your life, because a man who can write, 'I am sorry' at 12-year-old, is a man who is going to be a man worth knowing at 30. You hear?" "Yes, ma'am." She handed him back the paper. She kept walking. Rowan Hale was waiting at the wagon. He did not speak. He did not have to. He helped her up onto the seat. He climbed up beside her. He took the reins. Della Henley climbed in the back with the empty crates and the purse and the skillet and her shotgun and her Bible, and she settled herself, and she said low and satisfied, "Drive on Rowan Hale." And Rowan Hale drove on. They rode out of Coldwater in the late afternoon, with the prairie wide and gold in front of them, and the wagon wheels turning steady, and the 7 men of the walking H crew riding behind in a loose long line, and Mara Vance sitting up straight on the seat, with her mother's dress catching the sun, and her hand resting on Rowan Hale's hand on the brake. She did not look back. She did not need to. A woman who has spoken her own worth out loud in a tent in front of a town that was built to deny her does not need to look back. A woman like that goes forward. And she goes forward at the size she is, in the dress she chooses, with the man she has picked on the road she has earned. And the road from this day will be hers. And the gate at the end of it will open, and she will walk through it on her own 2 feet, and she will not be turned again, because a woman who has decided what she is worth cannot be turned by a world that was never qualified to decide for her in the first place. Mara Vance was home. Mara Vance was loved. Mara Vance had been right all along.